I'm just clearing out my bookshelf over here. Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Evelyn, and today we're talking about fanfiction. So a couple of weeks ago, around the same time we were having the Are graphic novels real literature debate, we were also having a is fanfiction real writing debate, which, like, seriously, can the elitist fuckwads just pick one thing at a time to have stupid opinions about? It took me a few weeks to get my thoughts in order and film this video, but here we are. The time is now. Let's get into it. Yes, fanfiction is real writing. Any writing that you do, whether or not you are doing it for fun, a hobby, or you want to be a professional author when you grow up, is real writing. Even if it's bad writing, even if it is objectively terrible, if you spent time putting those words down on paper or in a document, whether or not you share them with anyone, your writing is real and it is valuable. If anyone takes anything away from this video, I want it to be that. Your writing is valuable and it is real and it is valid, and don't listen to anybody else who's trying to tell you that the way you're writing is wrong. They don't know you. They don't know shit. So a lot of my formative writing experiences come from the fanfiction community. Not only was I writing fanfiction in middle school, I was also role-playing. I was very overwhelmed by world building. I had all of these wonderful, fantastic ideas in my head for worlds that I wanted to explore. But when I got down onto the page, I was like, I don't know how to tell this story. I don't know how dialogue works or these characters. I don't know how they should act. And so having fanfiction really helped me be less afraid of having to do everything at once. A lot of the fanfiction I wrote was within the Doctor Who fandom. And when you're writing within Doctor Who, you have this whole huge canon to pull from. You don't have to worry about world building from the ground up. What I was learning was how to craft storylines and character arcs and create smart dialogue and make what is on the page interesting so that I could let the world shine. That knowledge, so invaluable, just as valuable to me as the classes I am taking right now in college. And also from a reading and writing perspective, it's a way more accessible platform. Fanfiction, for the most part, is free. Books, for the most part, are not free. Fanfiction often comes with a lot more representation of queer characters, characters of color. Also, when you're writing and posting fanfiction a chapter at a time, you get feedback from readers right away. You know whether or not they're liking it. They will comment. They will very rudely tell you when you make grammar mistakes. But all of it helps. All of it teaches you in real time. I learned more about the basics of writing and formatting on fanfiction.net than anything here at college or even in high school. Anyone can access this pool of knowledge and information, whereas not a lot of people get to come to a school and do writing workshops or whatever. Really well-written fanfiction is amazing. It has compelling characters, a wonderful plot, it explores worlds in a very deep way, and it just makes you excited to read. The best fanfictions I've read have made me want to stay up all night and just have to find out what happens to the characters, just like the best books that I've read. So I wanted this to be a recommendations video, but there's no way for me to go about recommending fanfiction. There is so much of it. Tastes vary so much. You might not be into the same fandoms I'm into. Like, there's so many variables when it comes to recommending fanfiction, but what I can do is recommend to you some books that I personally think read like fanfiction. What I mean by that is I've analyzed the fanfiction that I personally enjoy, figured out sort of what are the core things about it that I really like, and then found books that I like for the same reasons, and that hopefully you all might like for the same reasons. if you like the same fanfiction I like for the same reasons. What I mean by these books read like fanfiction, I mean that they have a strong plot, compelling characters, I get the world, and they make me laugh, they make me happy, they make me want to dance around my room, they make me want to never put them down, they make me think about them once they're done, and I keep wanting to come back to them and come back to the world and the characters again and again. They make me excited to be reading. So I think that the main thing that makes a book read like fanfiction to me is that it has a strong hook, a clear, high concept. Because in fanfiction, everything is based around what if. You take the characters or you take the world and you go, what if this happened? And that's the what if is the key to the story. Books that read like fanfiction have that same sort of strong what if base to their concepts, like what if Anastasia in space, or what if queen kidnapped girl fall in love. The heart of the story boils down into something that you can understand very quickly and be excited about very quickly. Any good story should do that, fanfiction or published novel. You should be able to excite your readers with your concept. Any good story should be able to do that. Whether it's fanfiction or a published book, you should be able to excite readers with your concept, whether it be a new twist on a familiar genre or tropes that we all love. Which is why I think the way that literature treats tropes is sort of weird. We sort of antagonize certain tropes. We say they're overdone, they're dead, we don't want to see them anymore. When really it's not tropes that are inherently bad, it's the way they're used on a book-by-book basis. So the fact that publishing can be like, this trope is dead, is really funny to me because, like, in fanfiction, we fucking love our tropes. Countless characters from books, TV, and movies have been shoved into hotel rooms with only one bed because that's just, it's a scenario that's fun to read about. And it can be played a million different ways. And in fanfiction, we don't mind reading a million different versions of the same thing as long as they're all good. As long as the story is treating the characters well. And by that I don't mean like only good things are happening to the characters, but you know, treating them with respect as characters. They get to have moments of laughter and crying and be fully rounded and have adventures and angst. Angst is good. Fall in love, right? We will read our favorite characters falling in love over and over and over again in a million different worlds. That's so cool. That's so beautiful. Fanfiction is just so amazing. So anyway, there are a few authors I can think of off the top of my head who are really great at consistently hooking me in with like high concept premise and then delivering the sort of emotion and character that I'm craving from a story. By consistently, I mean I've read more than one of their books and got those very happy, I don't want to put this down, this is so good sort of feeling from them. For example, Sun Jimin, and she writes, for the most part, young adult contemporary romances, and her books rely very heavily on classic rom-com tropes, but told from the perspective of Indian American teenagers, and so it's a new spin on things we're already familiar with. Her most recent book, 10 Things I Hate About Pinky, uses the fake dating trope and the opposites attract trope, but also deals with things like high expectations from parents, especially immigrant parents, and how to deal with change over time. And it's both very, very funny and fun and romantic, but super emotional. And I read it in a day, just like I would read a fanfiction that I was invested in. Then there's Jennifer E. Smith. A lot of her books deal with characters who are going through transition periods in their lives, which is represented through the fact that a lot of them are traveling. The first book of hers I read, The Statistical Probability of Love at First Sight, takes place over the course of like 24 hours on a plane. Her most recent book that I've read is Field Notes on Love. The two main characters go on this cross-country train trip together because the guy has the tickets but they're in his ex-girlfriend's name and the girl just happens to have the same name as her, and so they're complete strangers going on this trip together, and she's making a documentary about love. It's so good, and like it just made me laugh and cry like within the same page even. I was so invested. That's another one that I read probably in a day. Then there's Emma Lord. I have her book Tweet Cute on my shelf right here next to me, and I was so lucky enough to be able to get an arc of her upcoming book, You Have a Match. They both tell super compelling stories that are rooted in family history, but also have really adorable romances. Tweet Cute, which I have here, follows Pepper and Jack, whose families are running competing restaurants, and they get into a Twitter war on accident without realizing that they're fighting with someone they know in real life. But at the same time, they're chatting on this like anonymous texting app that Jack created, and they've sort of developed feelings for each other there. It's very dramatic. It has my favorite identity shenanigans trope, and again, pretty sure that I read this in a day. Then we have Sophie Gonzalez. Her book Only Mostly Devastated released earlier in 2020, and it's sort of like Simon Versus meets Grease, but like in modern day high school. And the main character has this summer fling with a boy, and then ends up staying in the town he thought he was going to be leaving to go to school, and realizing that they're now classmates, but the boy isn't out to anybody, and drama ensues. I also was lucky enough to get an arc of her upcoming book, Perfect on Paper, which follows Darcy, who is giving her classmates anonymous relationship advice, but she gets caught by this guy who then hires her to help him win back his ex-girlfriend by giving him like very specific like relationship advice. Both of those books, not only super compelling premises, I love the characters, and also they were very queer, which is something that you find a lot more in fan fiction than you do in published works. Darcy specifically is a bisexual character whose romantic interest is a guy, and I loved that. And then of course I couldn't talk about authors who write like fan fiction without talking about Ashley Poston. I mean, come on. So the Once Upon a Con books are YA contemporary, and the premise is basically fairy tale retellings told at a Comic-Con type event. This one, The Princess and the Fangirl, explores what would happen when an actress in a very popular sci-fi movie series and a fan switch places. It's really wonderful. Again, just super lighthearted, fun, but also some critique of fandom culture, which fanfiction falls under, so it's relevant. I used her sci-fi book, Heart of Iron, as an example of a good hook, which is Anastasia in space, and I actually haven't read Among the Beast and Briars yet. I had it sent home instead of here because my copy is signed, and I didn't want to, like, lose it if I got kicked out of the dorms again. So I haven't gotten a chance to read it, but it's fantasy, and I'm so impressed with her ability to write across genres. I can't tell you if that one has the same fanfiction-y soul as the others, but I'm sure it does because Ashley Poston is one of the authors who I follow who is very vocal about writing fanfiction. Like right now she keeps talking about the Julia the Phantom's fanfiction that she's posting on AO3. And speaking of retellings, I wanted to dedicate a section of this video to them specifically because they're basically fanfiction. Inherently, the concept of retelling, taking characters from a story that people are already familiar with and going, what if? That's fanfiction. I am a sucker for retellings. In fact, the first book that probably popped into my head when I was thinking about making this video, aside from Ashley Poston's work, was the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer, but I didn't actually want to like include it because I've read fanfiction for those books, I feel like it doesn't count anymore. But it does tick all of the boxes. Familiar characters reimagined in a new and exciting way. And so some other retellings that I love that do that include the Charlotte Holmes books by Brittany Cavallaro, which follow Sherlock Holmes and Jamie Watson, who are the descendants of the famous Sherlock Holmes and John Watson. They end up going to the same American private school, and somebody does a copycat crime from one of the Sherlock Holmes books, and they are the only ones who can figure out what's going on. Then you have the Lady Janie's books by Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows, starting with My Lady Jane, which is actually more of like a historical retelling, touching on Lady Jane Grey, but putting her in this world where animal magic exists, like people can transform into animals. And then the second book, My Plain Jane, is actually a Jane Eyre retelling, and as we all know, I don't like Jane Eyre, but I love My Plain Jane. I think this is interesting in terms of comparing it to fanfiction because it's co-written by 3 women, and a lot of fanfiction is a collaborative effort between creators. Then we have Heartstrings and Other Breakable Things by Jacqueline Ferguson. I put this on here because I think that a well-written retelling, you don't have to be familiar with the source material. The source material just adds a layer if you are familiar with it. And this is one that I went into not realizing that it was a retelling of at first. It's a retelling of Mansfield Park, which I have not read, but I thoroughly enjoyed reading this book anyway because it's filled with lots of drama and romance, and it was just super duper fun to read. And then sticking with the whole Jane Austen thing, I have 2 Pride and Prejudice retellings on here. I love Pride and Prejudice. It's right here on my bookshelf. I collect copies of it and I collect retellings. It is my favorite classic novel of all time. I had to start this book 3 times before I got all the way through it. The first time was just for funsies. The second time was for a school thing. Both times I got to the part with Mr. Collins and could not get past it because I hate Mr. Collins with a burning passion. It was not until I read a Doctor Who fanfiction that was basically a Pride and Prejudice retelling, but with like Tin and Rose instead of Jane and Darcy, that I was like, maybe this story is actually really interesting and compelling in its own right, and I picked up the book again and I read it and I finished it and I loved it. I would not have read one of my favorite books of all time if it were not for Doctor Who fanfiction. So that's just a fun, interesting tidbit for y'all. Says a lot about me as a person, I think. 2 of my favorite Pride and Prejudice retellings are Heartstone by L. Catherine Wright, which is what if Pride and Prejudice had dragons in it? Love it, amazing. And then there's Pride and Premeditation by Tirza Price, which I just finished listening to the audiobook arc of this that I received through NetGalley. It doesn't release until March. So this one is still set in Regency England, but it takes Lizzie and places her as an aspiring lawyer at her father's law firm, and then takes Bingley and accuses him of murder, and Darcy is his lawyer, but Lizzie is trying to figure out who actually committed the murder because she wants to prove that she can solve a case. It was just so fun and compelling, and like it added so many things to the story, like a murder plot and pirates. It's the beginning of a series of like Jane Austen murder mysteries, so I'm really excited to continue through the series. And I just finished listening to this, so I had to mention it because I like did not want to put it down. And I'm not usually somebody who's like super into audiobooks, but I just sat and did nothing but listen to this story. And then there are books that are not retellings but still scratch that fanfiction itch. I think this is kind of difficult to do with a story that stands on its own. You have to have high concept, compelling characters. Often it's very firmly rooted within a genre, it's humorous, and queer characters are encouraged. So, for example, The Dark Tide by Alicia Ginsinka. This follows Eva, the Witch Queen of Caldella, who is supposed to pick a boy to sacrifice to make sure that the island is not eaten by the sea. And Lena, the girl who's in love with the boy that gets picked as the sacrifice, who offers herself up in his stead, and then the two girls start to have strong feelings for each other, which is not good because Lena's supposed to be a sacrifice. That right there hooked me. I knew I needed to read this, and the characters, the world building, everything lived up to my expectations. I love this so much. You should pick it up. It's so good. Such good fantasy. Then we have Today, Tonight, Tomorrow by Rachel Lynn Solomon, which follows Rowan and Neil, who are two academic rivals. They've been competing to one-up each other all throughout high school, and on the last day of school, they find out that a group of disgruntled AP students has decided to team up to make sure that the two of them don't win this annual scavenger hunt. So in turn, they have to team up in order to make sure that one of them can win, that they have a chance to beat each other one last time. But it turns out they may have a lot more in common than they first realized, and maybe there's some romantic feelings there. It takes place over the course of a single day, super fast-paced, super fun. It's based around this scavenger hunt, so it's got a very clear structure, and oh my god, so shippable. The Rowan and Neil, so freaking shippable. Next we have two superhero books. For some reason, one of my favorite AUs, even before I got into Miraculous Ladybug, was reading about characters that I loved as superheroes. Maybe it was just like the Justice League nerd of my childhood like emerging. But the Sidekick Squad series follows the superpowered children of both the superheroes and villains whose parents get kidnapped mysteriously and they have to go rescue them, and they uncover this sort of nefarious plot. And then Collateral Damage by Taylor Simons, which follows a main character who is not a superhero and who in fact really does not like superheroes at all, but who accidentally uncovers a plot to potentially kill some of the superheroes and has to help thwart it. They're both very firmly rooted within that superhero genre, but with a twist that makes it new and fresh and interesting. Sidekick Squad has a really cute female-female romance, but Collateral Damage has no romance at all. Two very different ends of the spectrum, love them both equally. Then we have Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa. This is the first book in a series, and I've only read the first book. I'm like partially through the second one, but I am so hooked on this. It follows Yumiko, who is a kitsune who was raised by monks, who's been entrusted with this scroll that a bunch of people want because it is part of a set of scrolls that will help you summon a dragon and get a wish. She's trying to travel to another temple to warn them that someone has been sending demons to come collect this scroll, and she's traveling with this demon slayer dude who is also looking for the scroll, who she can't quite trust but also feels very compelled toward. There are lots of characters in this one that I love. They sort of collect friends as they journey around. It sort of gave me Avatar: The Last Airbender vibes, almost as if Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender had to deal with like Disney's version of Rapunzel. If that's like a character combo that interests you, then I think you should check this book out. It's a quest, there's Japanese folklore, it's really good. I feel like I'm not doing it justice with this explanation, like, at all. But please pick it up and read it, because, like, nobody really talks about it. I haven't seen anybody talking about it, and I really, really enjoy it. Then we have Daughter of the Pirate King and Daughter of the Siren Queen, two books by Tricia Levenseller, which follow Alosa, the daughter of the Pirate King, who is trying to prove that she's worthy of becoming her father's second in command, so she goes on this undercover mission on an enemy ship and ends up falling for the first mate of the ship, and there's some cool stuff with sirens and pirate like lore, and Alosa's a badass. There's lots of flirting, lots of banter. We love to see it. Then there's Alby the One by Laila Lee, which follows a plus-size bisexual main character who joins a televised K-pop competition just to prove to her mother that fat girls actually can dance, and ends up falling for one of the guys who's also in the competition who's sort of famous. It's a very cute romance, a lot of like wonderful self-love, there's bisexual representation. It just made me very happy, and again, finished it in a day. Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas, which follows Yadriel. He is a trans brujo whose family doesn't actually think that he's going to be able to use magic. So in order to prove them wrong, he does his rites of passage in secret with the help of his cousin, and then summons a ghost. Except he summons the wrong ghost, and then he can't get rid of the ghost. And then he starts to have feelings for the ghost. It's wonderful. It made me cry multiple times. There is a mystery like involved. They're trying to figure out like, why do people keep dying? What's up with that? How are these deaths connected? Why can't we get rid of the ghost? And also, what happens when we finally are able to get rid of the ghost? Because we like the ghost a little bit, perhaps. Did I say it made me cry multiple times? Because it made me cry multiple times. And honestly, that's just an indicator of a great piece of literature. And last but not least, we have Tell Me Three Things by Julie Buxbaum. The main character in this book is starting at a new school after her father gets remarried, and she doesn't really have any friends, and she gets an email from this anonymous person who's offering to help her navigate the social like aspects of high school, and they end up emailing back and forth and like having this really great connection, and she's trying to figure out like who this is. Are they a real person? Who are they? Are they actually like genuine with her? Because she has pretty strong romantic feelings for them. At the same time, there are a couple of guys in real life that she thinks she might like, and so it's all very dramatic. It's my favorite trope. Like I said, identity shenanigans. I could read unlimited identity shenanigan stories, and I have through fanfiction. Alright, that's all of the books / authors that I have to recommend for you. Was this a ridiculously long list of titles? Yes. Are there more that I could probably talk about? Also, yes, if you want more thoughts on fanfiction, recommendations like this, leave a comment down below. Also, what are some books that you guys think read like fanfiction? I would love to get some recommendation. If somebody gave that "this reads like good fanfiction" stamp of approval, a book would shoot up to the top of my TBR. In summary, all writing is valid writing. Fanfiction can be a super helpful tool for writers, especially those who are just starting out. It helped me to learn the basics of plot and character development without having to worry about world building and such. I cut my authorial teeth on fanfiction, and I'm super proud to be able to say that. One day, if I have books published and people say that they read like good fanfiction, I will take that as a freaking compliment. Also, if one day I had books published and people wrote fanfiction for them, or drew fan art, or did any sort of like fandom culture thing surrounding them, oh my gosh, I would cry. I would love that so much. Because then I'll know I've succeeded in writing a story that connected with people, that they had fun reading it, that they love the characters, and that they want to be part of the world. Like that is so cool. I just love fandom people. We are so cool. So yeah, check out these books, support your local fanfiction authors, fuck Mr. Collins. I think that's all I have to say. So with that being said, my name is Evelyn. I make new videos every magical Monday, and I'll see you real soon. Bye bye.